Seraphina's Pove. Daniel's face lit up the moment the video connected. Just seeing him grinning like that filled my chest with something warm and bubbly. "Mom, happy birthday." I beamed. "Thank you, my love." He briefly disappeared from the screen and returned with a large cardboard with "Happy Birthday, Mom," designed with sparkly markers and little cartoon caricatures I assumed were me. My eyes watered as he said, "Grandma said I couldn't send it to you for security reasons." "That's okay, Danny. I love it, thank you." "You look great," he beamed, and then his eyes widened. "What are you wearing?" I held the phone out so he could see properly. "They're my training clothes." It was a sleek black tactical set with silver rune detailing and armored accents, complete with fingerless gloves, combat boots, and a cropped leather jacket I never actually wore to train. I thought it was a bit of overkill, but Maya said the first step to feeling like a badass was to dress like one. "Whoa!" Daniel gawked, his eyes wide in a way that made me swell with pride. "You look like an action hero." I laughed. "That's a bit of a stretch." "So tell me," he said, "did you have a good birthday?" I smiled, glancing at the pile of flowers and gifts on my bed. I tilted the camera so Daniel could see. "I did. My friends threw me a surprise party." He gasped in delight. "Friends?" I laughed. "Don't sound so surprised." He shook his head. "No, I just—" His smile was so wide it crinkled his eyes shut, pure joy lighting up his face. "I'm so glad you have friends, Mom. You deserve that." I smiled. "Thank you, baby." His smile faded slightly. "I wish I could have been there, though. We're always together on your birthday." "Oh, baby, I wish you were here, too. He always made my birthday slightly less miserable." "But I'll be back soon," he said. "Right?" "Gods, I hoped so." I nodded. "Sooner than you think. I can't wait." I debated whether the topic I was about to broach was a good idea, but decided to go ahead anyway. "Have you spoken to your dad?" Daniel's smile immediately faded, and he looked away without answering. I sighed. No matter what went on between me and Kieran, I didn't want my son harboring resentment towards his dad. Kieran might have been a distant husband and an even worse ex, but he was a good father, recent actions notwithstanding. "Honey," I said softly, "you should talk with your dad, okay? He loves you, and he's super sorry about missing the PTC." He looked back at me, and I hated that his bright countenance had dulled. "Did he even wish you a happy birthday? I told him he has to treat you better." I blinked, processing his words. So that was why Kieran sent that message. It hadn't come from remorse or sentiment. It was to look good in Daniel's eyes. "He did text. He wished me a happy birthday," I said gently, stamping the resentment that suddenly rose in me. The confrontation was none of his business. He didn't need to know about Kieran's cruel words or how Celeste ripped into me yet again. Daniel didn't need that weight on his little shoulders. The tension in his face eased. "Okay, good. I'm glad he did. Maybe I'll talk to him again." I smiled softly. "That's a good idea. I'm proud of you, baby." "So tell me more about your party," he said, his excitement returning. We spoke for a while longer before finally hanging up after he promised to call Kieran again. I snuggled into my pillows, a contented smile on my face. It had been a good day. A really, really good day. A part of me was skeptical. I knew I deserved happiness, but was I truly allowed? The doorbell rang through the house, breaking me out of my reverie. Something twisted in my belly as I went down to answer the door. I swear, if Kieran or Celeste decided they wanted to pull any of their shit on my birthday. Oh. Maya stood on my porch in a dress. She always looked formidable in her training clothes, but in her halter dress, strappy sandals, and her curly hair in a wild afro around her head, she looked like a goddess. She pushed her oversized sunglasses up on her head and grinned. "Hi, birthday girl." My mouth opened, and an incredulous sound fell out. "You ready for our big shopping spree?" she asked, eyes gleaming. I blinked. "Shopping?" She nodded. "Yep." I shook my head in disbelief. "But why?" She laughed. "Do friends need a reason to hang out? Do I need a reason to spoil my friend on her birthday?" That word, friends, resonated within me like a gong. As far as I was concerned, I exaggerated earlier for Daniel's benefit. But hearing Maya call herself my friend had to be the best part of today. When I was younger, back when she merely tolerated me as opposed to the scalding hatred she now bore for me, I was like an accessory for Celeste. I had no other friends, and after marriage, all I had was Daniel. Maya gently flicked my forehead, snapping me back to the present. We're gonna have to do something about all this noise in your head, she skied. I couldn't help but smile. Sorry, Yeah. She braced her hands on my shoulders and spun me around. Go change! Yeah, I rushed back inside the house, a giddy smile on my face. Where do you think you're going? I paused, blinking in confusion at the row of department stores in front of me, Macy's, Nordstrom, and Clark's. They all had the things I needed: clothes, shoes, home essentials. Shopping? My answer came out as a question because Maya was looking at me like I'd grown two horns. She sighed in mild exasperation. Oh, you clueless sweetheart. She looped her arm through mine and tugged me in the opposite direction. Nope, today isn't about utility, it's about indulgence. This way. But I don't... The boutique she led me to was the kind of place I usually passed by without even looking in. Silks, sequins, and shoes that looked more like art than footwear. I hesitated in the doorway, but Maya tugged me forward. I don't need all this, Maya, I said, my eyes wide. She rolled her eyes. Actually, you do, she said matter-of-factly. I do? For the gala, she said like it was obvious. Lucian's hosting one in a few weeks. Formal dress, full glam. She gestured into the store with a flourish. The works. I started to protest. Maya, this sounds expensive. I can't. She waved it off. Lucian's covering it. Said it's your reward for surviving his sadistic training regimen. She winked. And mine. I wanted to keep protesting, but the smile she gave me was so disarming. I let her pull me into the explosion of sparkles and silk, my reservations dissolving with every glittering step. At first, I felt ridiculous. The gowns clung too tightly, shimmered too brightly, but then I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, wearing something backless and emerald green, and something stirred. I looked beautiful. No one had ever cared to dress me like this before. I was never invited to balls or galas when I was with Kieran. His family made sure I was tucked out of sight, an embarrassment, their secret shame. But now I was being seen, and I liked it. It felt so fucking amazing. We had just finished our purchases, Maya insisting I take 2 gowns and 4 ridiculous pairs of heels I could barely walk in, when the day took an inevitable turn. We ran into her. Celeste was flanked by 2 shadows. I recognized them as Emma and Abby. Growing up, I'd mentally referred to them as Gretchen Wieners and Karen Smith because when all 3 of them were together, they reminded me of the plastics from the movie Mean Girls, and Celeste, reprising her role as Regina George, looked us up and down with a sneer. Well. She glanced at the bags in our hands and scoffed. Look who's playing dress-up. Emma smirked. Doesn't matter what she wears, Celeste. Trash in silk is still trash. I flinched, the comment hitting harder than it should have. Old reflexes kicked in, and I felt myself begin to shrink. But Maya stepped forward, fire in her eyes, and suddenly, despite the dress and heels, she was my formidable trainer, the fiercest person I knew. Say that again, she hissed, her voice low. Dangerous. But this time to my face and see what happens. Emma's eyes widened, and then she was the one shrinking, withering under Maya's glare. Celeste didn't seem as fazed, but her laugh lacked its usual bite. You think dressing her up changes anything? Kieran's already made his choice. I'm his Luna. Congrats, Maya said coolly. What a world-altering achievement. You must be so proud. Would you like a cookie? The way she said it made it sound like Celeste had drawn on the walls and was expecting praise. Maya took a step back, standing at my side as Celeste bristled with barely contained anger. My new friend slipped her arm in mine. Come on, Sarah, she said. It reeks of insecurity and desperation. Celeste's eyes flashed, but she didn't say another word as Maya pulled me away. I let her guide me forward, our heels clicking against the polished floor like punctuation marks. I could feel the burn of glares on my back, but I didn't look back. Celeste was where she belonged. Behind me, Seraphina's povey. As we walked, my shoulders started to ache, not from the bags I was carrying, but from the weight I thought I'd finally shrugged off. I tried to hide it. I smiled at Maya, thanked her 1,000 times, even made a joke about tripping in one of the ridiculous heels she made me buy. But the truth? My shopping spirit had flatlined somewhere between Emma's sneer and Celeste's smug little declaration. Even now, it echoed in my head, Kieran's already made his choice. I knew that, and it shouldn't have bothered me one bit. Still hearing it, spoken with such confidence, like I was nothing but a discarded mistake, burned hotter than any insult ever could. "Okay, one last stop," Maya announced as we pulled up to our cars. "My car has been acting up lately," she tapped on the hood for emphasis, "and if that isn't a sign that I need a new whip, I don't know what is." She pointed to the dealership across the street from the mall. "Let's drop our bags and I think I'll head home," I said. "I need to decompress, maybe take a nap before dinner. It's been quite a day." Maya narrowed her eyes slightly. "I thought we could grab dinner together." I forced a grin. "Rain check?" She bit her lower lip. "You're not letting those girls get to you, right? They're all fucking juvenile, not worth the headspace, Sarah." I nodded, my jaw aching with the strained smile. "I know, Maya, and thanks for that earlier. It was pretty badass." She nodded slowly. "All right, birthday girl, you promise you're not going home to sulk under a blanket?" I shook my head. "I'm not. At least I hoped I wasn't." She watched me a beat longer, then nodded. "Okay then." She watched me as I unlocked my car and put my shopping bags inside. Before I slid into the driver's seat, I waved at her cheerfully, pretending like I didn't feel as if I'd just been shoved 10 steps backward in my healing. Maya's POV. I've walked into ambushes alone and walked out without a scratch. Once took down an alpha twice my size with plastic chopsticks. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for the jolt that went through me the moment I stepped into that godforsaken dealership. I'd been distracted, worrying about my new friend and all the forces of the world that conspired to hurt her. I'd been wondering what else I could do to help her, to ease the weight she constantly carried like a pain mule, when I felt it. White-hot lightning rushing through my body, freezing me in place. All my senses honed in on the source of that feeling, and I felt my wolf Naira stir. He was leaning against the hood of a dark green Mercedes G-Wagon and had all polished steel and understated arrogance, casually arguing with the service manager like he owned the place. I wouldn't have noticed him if the Bond hadn't punched me in the chest like a battering ram. "Mate!" Naira howled. The sound filled my head. Awareness spread through my body. The sheer force of my realization gave me vertigo. Tall, broad-shouldered, a clean-shaven jaw, I could already see myself punching for fun. And those eyes, like storm clouds gathering in a clear blue sky, locked on me the moment I entered. He felt it too. I saw his body tense as he straightened, saw his pupils dilate, felt the weight of his attention on me, the service manager suddenly an afterthought. He started toward me, slow and cautious, probably trying to play it cool despite the magnetic pull humming between us like a live wire. Each step he took toward me reflected in my pounding heart, but I forced it to be still, forced my nerves to ease. I was Maya fucking Cartridge, and I didn't get fazed. Mate or no. "Hey," he began. His voice was warm silk, smooth and rich. I raised a brow. "If you're about to say you think we know each other, don't. It's cliché." He blinked, then laughed. Damn it. It was a nice laugh. It curled into the air between us, oddly intimate. Naira purred. "I wasn't. I was going to say," he stuck out a hand, "I'd like to know your name." My lips twitched. "Would you now?" "Very much." I almost told him. Almost. I'd always found the idea of fated mates a little ridiculous. No disrespect to the moon goddess, but if I was going to be with someone for the rest of my life, it would be my decision, not fate's. I wasn't the kind of girl you stumbled upon and just claimed. I had to be earned. I took a step closer, close enough to let the tension sharpen. His scent hit me, dark leather with a trace of pine. My senses sharpened, in recognition, in hunger. Shit. Then here's a challenge, mystery man. I forced my voice to steady, to not betray the longing coiling in my belly. You've got 1 week. Find out who I am, without using the bond. No sniffing, no asking around the pack, no cheating, and if you manage that. His brows lifted, intrigued. Then we'll talk. His eyes darkened, his lips quirking. A challenge. Interesting. I tilted my head. Are you up for it? His eyes flit to my lips, and almost instinctively I bit down on my lower lip, wondering what it would be like to kiss him. Explosive, no doubt. Definitely. I smirked and turned to leave. There was no way in hell I could focus on car shopping when he was in the vicinity, within reach. "See you in a week, stud. Let's see what you're made of." Celeste's Pope. Emma wouldn't stop checking the mirror in her compact. I didn't blame her. I'd told her to go with soft curls and a peachy nude lip, something pretty and approachable, not desperate. She looked perfect. All we needed was for Ethan to show up and notice it. I'd planned it perfectly. I'd asked Ethan to pick me up from the mall. Meeting Emma here would be a happy coincidence, followed by a casual movie invite. At that point, I would suddenly feel sick and take an Uber home to get some rest. Emma had carried a torch for Ethan for years, and it shouldn't have to take much to create a spark between them. Except he was almost an hour late, and Abby and I were running out of things to say that would keep Emma's nerves from unraveling. "He's coming," I repeated, more for myself than her. "He probably got caught up at the car dealership. You know how he is when he starts talking about cars." Emma gave me a tight nod, but her eyes kept darting toward the boutique's glass doors, the same ones Sarah and her little bodyguard had walked through earlier. The entire interaction still left a bad taste in my mouth and simmering anger in my chest. I didn't know what I hated more: Sarah pretending she belonged in a place like this, or that smug little curl on her friend's lips as she defended the cunning snake. I shoved all thoughts of them to the back of my mind, ignoring my cheek stinging with the memory of Sarah's slap. Everything concerning my older sister filled me with a bitterness that eclipsed all else, and I couldn't afford a distraction. Today was about Emma, about putting the right people in the right place, starting with making sure Ethan finally saw what was right in front of him. I spotted him just as Emma stood to smooth her dress. He came from across the mall, weaving through the late afternoon crowd. The moment I saw his face, something shifted in my gut. He looked off. His eyes were unfocused, his movements sharp, tense, like his whole body was vibrating with something he hadn't figured out how to process yet. There was this strange energy rolling off him, almost like he was holding back a shift. "Hey," I waved lightly. "Over here." "Ethan," Emma said as he approached, giving him her best sweet smile. "It's good to see you. It's been a while." For a moment, he didn't respond. His jaw flexed, and he looked past us, like his mind was somewhere else entirely. Then, finally, he blinked and looked at Emma, then at me. He reached out and grabbed my hand, pulling me away from my friends. "Ethan," I hissed, "you just ignored Emma. You're being rude." "I found her," he said, a tremor in his voice. I frowned. "What?" "My mate," he clarified, a tinge of awe in his voice. "My Luna." My eyes widened. "What? Who?" But he didn't elaborate. He wasn't smiling, wasn't bragging. He looked stunned, wrecked, disoriented, like the ground had shifted under him and he hadn't quite caught his balance. I stepped closer. "Are you sure?" His eyes finally focused on me, and I saw it, that flicker of knowing, of instinct. "As sure as the blood pumping in my veins," he answered, his voice low. Logan sensed her instantly. His wolf aura glowed in his eyes as if Logan himself was trying to confirm Ethan's declaration. There was no denying it. Ethan turned and I reached out, grabbing his hand. "Wait," I said. "Emma wanted to know if you wanted to watch a movie with her." He looked at me like I'd suggested he strip and run naked through the mall. He gently but firmly pulled his arm out of my grasp. "I have no time for that. I need to find out who she is." His eyes glazed over, and I knew he was thinking about her, his mate. Fuck. He was already halfway across the tiled floor by the time I processed what had just happened. I turned to Emma, and she blinked at me curiously. I didn't know what to say to her. Not because I was heartbroken for her, but because I was already calculating what this meant. If Ethan had truly found his mate, then everything I'd been quietly orchestrating, positioning Emma at his side, guiding the narrative, would unravel in a blink. And more importantly, I'd lose influence. Emma would have been the perfect Luna, not too ambitious, not too clever, loyal to me, malleable. I could have whispered in her ear and held the reins without anyone noticing. I would have remained important, visible, the sister who built the Luna. But now Ethan was tethered to someone I didn't know, someone I hadn't chosen, someone I couldn't control. And that was the real danger. Because if his mate had a mind of her own, if she didn't need help, or worse, didn't want mine, then where did that leave me? Invisible. I had to find her and somehow steer my brother away from her. Before it was too late, Seraphina's Pove. I woke up before dawn, unwilling to lie in bed and let my thoughts spiral any further like they'd been doing lately. The quiet house made for too much noise in my head. I had a yoga session scheduled at the Moon Hall today. I'd done a few over the last couple of weeks, and I found that it helped with my healing and also settled my mind. I changed into my yoga attire, soft gray leggings and a worn sports bra that smelled faintly of my usual lavender oil. I hadn't used it in a while because the scent brought back memories. Warm, firm hands pressing me to a rigid body, soft lips, searing heat. I shook my head. This was exactly the kind of noise I needed yoga to quiet. I had just stepped out of the locker room when Maya intercepted me, her hair back in its usual cornrows, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. "Morning, sunshine," she said, stretching out a cup to me. I was still trying to reconcile the idea of my ruthless trainer, Maya, as my new friend. As strange as it was, it made me deliriously happy that someone like her had me in mind to the point of getting me a cup of coffee. Pathetic, I know, but I'd been shown so little kindness in my life, so seemingly inconsequential gestures meant the world. I eyed the cup of coffee wistfully. "Thanks, but I can't. I'm going to the Moon Hall." "Ah," Maya nodded in understanding, withdrawing her hand. "Caffeine and yoga do not go together." "So," she started, her tone dancing with something. Teasing. "OTS has been buzzing with some gossip since your birthday party." I raised an eyebrow, amused. "I didn't take you for someone who cared about, listened to, or spread gossip." She shrugged. "I usually don't, but this one is particularly juicy, and I'm invested." She winked. I chuckled. "Okay, so what is it?" She wiggled her dark brows. "It's about you and Lucian." My steps faltered. "What?" "You guys looked cozy during your party, and it's no secret that he took you home afterward, and you two spend a lot of time together." I let out an amused breath. "Lucian and I are friends, Maya." "Sure you are," she sing-songed. "I heard he declared to your family that he was going to court you." My jaw dropped. How did that even get out? "Oh, you can't hide anything in OT. She shrugged. The walls have ears and big mouths." I laughed, shaking my head. "Lucian was just helping me, that's it." Maya snorted. "Is that what we're calling flirting these days?" She nudged me. "Come on, Sarah. You can't tell me you haven't noticed how he looks at you, or how he shows up no matter what you need." She puffed out her chest and deepened her voice. "If you need anything, Sarah," she said, obviously mimicking Lucian, "and I mean anything, I'm here." I felt the heat rise in my face and silently cursed my fair skin. "He's just a friend, Maya." "And isn't that the best foundation for a strong relationship?" I groaned. "Maya," she chuckled. "Fine, but I'm just saying you and Lucian would make the most adorable couple, and I've known him for years. He would be amazing to you." At this point, my face was the color of a tomato. I shook my head, wishing I had my hair down to shield my cheeks. "I just got divorced. I have a son who's already not too keen on his father's new relationship. I don't want any more complications." Kieran and Celeste were one thing, but I didn't think Daniel could handle it if I started dating someone new, too. Maya shrugged, undeterred. "Sometimes love doesn't care what you want, it shows up anyway." I had nothing to say to that, but it would be pretty fucking ironic if love showed up now after I'd spent a decade waiting for it. We arrived at Moon Hall, and Maya stepped back as I gripped the door handle. "Well, enjoy your session," she said with a conspiratorial smile, like she knew something I didn't. I stepped into the meditation hall, and my steps faltered, understanding Maya's smug departure. The Moon Hall was calm and cool, lit by golden rays streaming through the domed skylight. Low incense braziers smoldered at the corners, releasing a faint, grounding scent of pine and sage. Old claw marks scarred the worn stone floor, left by wolves that had shifted during sessions. In the center lay a sunken circle ringed with cushions and woven mats, and on one of the cushions sat Lucian. He was sitting cross-legged, his posture calm, his expression unreadable. But when his eyes lifted and met mine, something inside me fluttered. Awareness. Damn Maya for getting into my head. "Come in, Seraphina," the instructor, a serene-looking gamma named Ilsa, waved me in. I'd meditated with her the first 2 times, but it had just been us. Lucian smiled softly as I moved into the room. "This is a surprise," I noted. It was Ilsa who answered. "Lucian and I have decided it is time to attempt to connect with your absent wolf," she said in a soothing voice that belied the gravity of her words. My heart skipped a beat. We were going to try to access my wolf. "No werewolf is born without a wolf," she continued. But sometimes the wolf retreats or a connection breaks before it ever had a chance to form. Today, we'll reach for that connection. Try to access that silenced part of you. She waved towards the cushion beside Lucien, who was watching me intently. And the presence of an alpha helps immensely. My stomach flipped, my body buzzed with nervous energy. Before I could get too in my head about it, I sat down beside Lucien as Ilsa sat in front of us, crossing her legs too. "Now," she said in that soothing voice, "face each other and hold hands." Lucien immediately turned to face me. When I did, mirroring his position, he gave me a warm smile. "Relax," he said softly. "I'm relaxed," I mumbled. He chuckled and held out his palms, waiting. I hesitated, but when our hands touched, something shifted me. The warmth of his skin seeped into mine, not burning but grounding. "Just breathe," he whispered. "You're safe." I knew that. When I was with Lucien, there was no doubt that I was safe. "Now," Ilsa said, "close your eyes." I obeyed. "I want you to center yourself like you've done in our past sessions. Focus on your breathing. In and out, in and out, in and out. Let the world around you fade away. What you're looking for is inside you. She's lost, but she wants to be found. She wants to find you." I let Ilsa's words guide me as I tried to settle myself. After doing it previously, it was now easier. The world dulled, the voices faded, my heartbeat slowed. Each breath unspooled the knots in my chest, one at a time, until my body felt untethered, floating in the quiet between worlds. Then, softly, so softly I almost missed it, I heard something. A sound. It wasn't a voice, not exactly. More like a note reverberating just beneath the surface of silence. Low, raw, primal, a vibration through my body. I leaned into it, unsure if it was real or a figment of my imagination. But it came again. A call, distant, wild, fragile, and oddly familiar. My breath hitched, my pulse faltered. Inexplicably, I knew that sound, knew it as well as I knew the breath in my lungs and the beat of my heart. It was her, my wolf, the part of me that had always been hollow, empty. A werewolf without a wolf was like a person born without limbs. I never knew how to miss it, I just knew something was missing. But now, she was here, somewhere just beyond the veil, within reach. I could feel her, faint as a whisper, circling me from the edges of my mind, pacing in a place I couldn't yet reach. The air between us was heavy, thick like fog. I felt that vibration again, a movement. Each step she took sent a ripple through me. She wasn't charging toward me. She didn't leap with joy or relief. She hesitated, wary, guarded. Because she didn't know me. I was as much a stranger to her as she was to me. I wanted to call out to her, tell her I'd spent my whole life missing her. But I didn't know if she'd understand. Still, I inched closer, mentally, emotionally, in whatever way I could. Each breath deepened my anchor to the space, and the fog around us began to stir. The outline of trees shimmered in the distance, pines, like the scent in the moon hall. I felt the warmth of Lucien's hands in mine and struggled to remain grounded, not to slip back into the physical. What I wanted was here. She was here. Pale and ghostly, a silhouette half-formed, she prowled the tree line, watching me, waiting. And then, just for a moment, the fog shifted and her eyes met mine. Familiar, feral, mine. Something inside me broke open at the sight. A pressure behind my ribs I hadn't even known I was holding released all at once. The ache, the emptiness, I felt it begin to fill. And just as the mist began to thin, just as I felt the first tremor of recognition tremble between us, bang! The door slammed open, jolting me out of the trance like a snapped cord. My eyes flew open. My head turned. In the doorway stood Kieran, frozen. His gaze locked onto Lucien and me, our hands still clasped, our faces flushed from the trance, from something more than just breathwork. Kieran's eyes widened, disbelief cutting sharply across his face. I saw it all in a single second. Shock, confusion, and then something deeper. Something that made the air between us thrum like a struck chord. And me? I was reeling. From what I'd just seen, what I'd just felt. But as the world around me came into focus, I felt that feeling fade, and the fog thickened till it was as solid as a wall. The delicate ache of my wolf's presence faltered, then vanished altogether, like she'd turned and run back into the dark. Gone. Kieran's pov. I was supposed to be watching Celeste train. I'd agreed to accompany her to her training session at OTS that morning when she'd asked. Her gaze held that familiar plea, the one that said, "Prove you still care." That and her appalling statistics that Lucian had shown me were the reason I was once again at OTS headquarters. The plan was to keep a respectful distance, show support, maybe give her some pointers if she asked. But it was one thing to see the numbers. It was another to have a first-hand experience of just how far behind Celeste was in her training. We hadn't even made it halfway through warm-ups before I realized she wasn't focused. Her eyes weren't on the course. They were on me. Her footwork lagged, her form slipped, and her trainer winced more than once when Celeste nearly missed her mark. I kept my distance. I didn't want to overstep with her trainer's instructions. But the longer I stayed, the more distracted she became, tripping over drills, snapping at her trainer, stealing glances at me like I was the one throwing her off balance. Eventually, I stepped away. Told her I needed air. The truth was, I couldn't take the weight of her gaze anymore. I was a distraction she didn't need right now. The second I stepped out of the room, the pressure in my chest shifted, like the air changed density. I paused in the hallway, rolling my shoulders. I remembered Lucian's words, urging me to focus on Celeste and her training. But I didn't even know where to start with her. How could I help her if she couldn't even concentrate with me in the same room? Ow! Celeste's indignant yell floated out into the corridor. I fought the urge to roll my eyes and pushed away from the wall. I wandered the corridor outside the training halls, heading nowhere in particular. I knew Sarah was somewhere in this building, and that knowledge was a curse. I wondered what she was doing. Whatever it was, she was probably performing levels higher than Celeste. I stamped down the urge to seek her out, to see her. Nothing good would come out of that. Not after the way we'd left things. I was about to turn and head back to Celeste's training room when I froze in my tracks. It felt like I'd been shot through with a bolt of lightning, freezing me from within. I felt Ashar, who had been quiet all morning, stir. Something singed my blood, like a voice, a whisper, a command, a sudden, fierce tug beneath my ribs, an awakening. It wasn't just instinct, it wasn't routine alertness or the casual awareness of another wolf in the vicinity. This was primal, visceral, intimate, and familiar. My pulse stumbled. What is that? I thought in confusion. The pull grew stronger. Ashar surged, growling low in my chest. Go. I turned, following the magnetic pull like I'd been hooked on an invisible thread and reeled forward. It wasn't a direction. It was a feeling. A scent, barely there, a heat blooming under my skin, electric, foreign and familiar all at once. Ashar went from curious to feral in a heartbeat. I could feel him straining against my mind, pushing against the cage of my body, demanding to move faster, get closer. And then it hit me, what this strange, overwhelming sensation was. Mating call. Ashar snarled and lunged, recognition blazing through him like wildfire. He knew that call. He knew her. But I didn't. My brain scrambled. I'd never felt anything like this. Never heard that frequency, that tone. Never smelled that exact scent. Warm vanilla and sandalwood. The edge of something wild, yet fragile. But Ashar. He knew. His voice was pure certainty. Mine. I stopped in front of a closed door I hadn't meant to find. My hand went to the handle, already burning with tension I didn't understand. I was barely able to restrain myself from tearing into the room with all the force simmering in my body. Time stopped. In the center of the room, a meditation circle. The soft haze of incense curled through shafts of golden light. And at the center of it, my heart seized. Her. Sarah. Kneeling across from Lucian Reed, their hands clasped, her face flushed, her lips parted like she was caught mid-breath. Her eyes were closed. Her expression was softer than I'd ever seen it, unguarded, glowing with something deep and primal. A sheen of sweat clung to her brow, trickled down the back of her neck. I felt it before I understood it, the low hum in the room, the frayed threads of something destined being stitched back together. Ashar howled, not with rage but with longing, with recognition. He made me surge toward her, certain of what I couldn't name, only feel. This was it, her. The one, the bond. I didn't understand it, but he did. Then her eyes flew open, and everything changed. She gasped, sharp and startled, as if waking from a dream. And in the space of a single breath, the feeling disappeared. Snapped, cut clean, like whatever force had tethered us had retreated the moment she came back to herself. Gone, just gone. I stumbled forward a step, desperate to feel it again, to confirm it hadn't just been in my head, that the sudden hollowness inside me had once been filled with something bright and burning and potent. Ashar whined low, disoriented. Lucian moved before I could reach her. He rose to his feet, placing himself squarely between us. Calm, controlled, possessive. "This is a sacred space, Alpha Blackthorn," he said evenly. I barely heard him. My focus was on Sarah. Now standing too, her expression shuddered. She looked at me, but there was nothing in her eyes. No recognition, no pull, not even the echo of what had just lit me up from the inside. Whatever I'd felt, she hadn't, or she didn't remember. Or it was already lost. I stepped closer anyway, hand reaching out of its own accord. It wrapped around her arm. "Sarah!" She flinched, and I stopped cold. Something inside me twisted. The connection, whatever it had been, was gone. The wolf I'd felt rising to meet mine had vanished like smoke, as if it had never existed. Ashar let out a low, pained growl inside me, a sound of protest, of mourning. I'd found something and lost it in the same breath. The door behind me slammed open, jolting me. "Kieran?" Celeste's voice was like ice water down my spine, dampening the last embers of the fire I'd felt. I turned to find her standing in the doorway, eyes flicking between me, Sarah, and Lucian. Hurt was already blooming on her face, even though she didn't know what she was seeing. Sarah pulled her arm out of my grip, putting space between us like she needed it to breathe. Lucian was already at her side, steering her away without saying a word. She didn't look back as they left the room through a second doorway. I stood there, heart pounding, chest hollow, the echo of something precious fading fast. Celeste approached slowly, her voice careful. "Key, what were you doing in Sarah's class?" I could barely form the words, could barely understand their magnitude. "I felt something. Ashar did. A call. I don't understand it, but—" I exhaled heavily. "It was intense." She frowned, confusion giving way to disbelief. "And that led you here? You thought Sarah might be your mate?" My silence was all the answer she needed. "That's not possible," she snapped. "Werewolves without wolves don't have mates. There's no way Sarah's your mate." I ran my hand through my hair, feeling disheveled. "I don't know what I felt, Celeste. Celeste's face shifted, wounded pride curling into something sharper. She looked away, voice tightening. "My wolf's been off," she said finally. "For the last decade. I haven't told anyone, not even you. I didn't want it to affect how people saw me, how you saw me." That caught me off guard. She continued, softer now. "After what happened that night, my wolf never fully recovered. The trauma of seeing you two together, it changed something. She stopped responding like she used to. Some days I can barely feel her at all." I stared at her, guilt winding through me like barbed wire. Celeste looked up at me, eyes glistening. "What you felt wasn't Sarah. Maybe it was my wolf. I've felt her growing stronger since I've been training. Maybe that's what you sensed. Then why did it lead me to—" She stepped closer, her voice quiet but sure. "You and I are fated, Kieran. We've always known that. I've never doubted it, not even after what happened. And I couldn't say anything. Not when she looked at me like that. Not when she'd just cracked herself open for me. So I wrapped my arms around Celeste, pulling her into my chest. She trembled slightly. And I held her tighter, even as Ashar growled low beneath my skin, restless, unconvinced, Seraphina's pove. Kieran's behavior had been a dizzying cocktail of infuriating and befuddling since we got divorced. Today was worse. It rattled me down to my core, jarred me in a way I couldn't understand. The way he'd looked at me in the meditation circle, how he gripped me, his wolf rising to the surface like Ashar was trying to speak for him, only for him to pull away and walk back to her. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't want to. As the door to the moon hall shut behind us, I leaned against the wall, forcing calming breaths, in and out, in and out. Lucian must have sensed the spiraling questions in my mind, the jumbled emotions running through me, because he leaned in, voice smooth and steady. "Sarah? Are you okay?" I looked up at him, blinking like I was seeing him for the first time. "I felt her," I whispered, still in awe. The feeling had already faded, and the memory was getting hazy with every passing second. But there was no denying it. I had a wolf, lost, hidden, but there. He smiled, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. The action was oddly intimate, and my breath hitched in response. "We should celebrate," he declared. "Let me take you out to dinner." I frowned. I lost her almost immediately. I'm not sure there's anything to celebrate. He shook his head. Are you kidding me? That was immense progress. That you were able to sense your wolf on the first try is amazing, Sarah. I felt my lips twitch. So you think I'll be able to sense her better as time goes by? He nodded. Definitely. I let the smile show. Yeah, dinner sounds nice. He grinned. I'll pick you up at 6. He winked before turning and heading back down the hall. When he disappeared around the corner, I turned toward the door, wondering if Kieran and Celeste were still in the moon hall. The look on his face flashed in my mind, dazed, baffled, flustered, and I shook my head. Whatever that was, I was done being entangled in Kieran-Celeste drama. 4 hours later, I was spread-eagled on the mat in the training room, soaked in sweat and ruining the day Maya Cartridge was born. Well, look who's getting stronger, she mused, dropping to the mat next to me and crossing her legs. Oh, is that what this is? I wheezed. 'Cause I could have sworn I was dying. Are you kidding me? You breezed through that last drill almost as fast as I do. I let out a breathless laugh as I sat up. I felt my wolf today during meditation. Maya's eyes widened. That's amazing, Sarah. She leaned forward and pulled me into a hug. I knew you could do it. I laughed, leaning into her embrace. I didn't take you for a hugger. I'm full of surprises, babe, she said, pulling away. I chuckled. Lucian is taking me out to dinner to celebrate. No, stop that. I rolled my eyes as Maya wiggled her eyebrows suggestively. Oh, is he now? A romantic, candle-lit. As friends, I emphasized. To celebrate today, I was going to ask if you wanted to come. After what she'd insinuated earlier and that brief tender moment out in the hallway, I needed her presence at dinner as a buffer. Because rumors didn't rise out of nothing, so if people thought Lucian and I were a thing, then that had to mean he. Can't, babe, sorry. I groaned. Maya, she chuckled. It's not even about you and Lucian. She lowered her voice. I kind of have to lay low for a while. Can't be seen out in public, especially not with you two. I cocked my head. Huh? She leaned over and patted my cheek affectionately. All in good time, babe. I'll explain in good time. I looked at her in confusion. Right. We avoided Luna Noir like the plague, opting for a cute little restaurant in Beverly Hills. It was beautiful, with a touch of vintage charm, the kind of place where conversations floated low and candlelight softened the atmosphere. Maya told me about this place, as that Lucian ventured. She comes here a lot. She lives close by. I eyed the candles and subtly rolled my eyes. Of course she did. Dinner with Lucian wasn't anything we hadn't done before. Yet everything felt different tonight. Lucian was charming and warm as always, but something behind his eyes had changed. Maybe it was me, replaying Maya's words in my mind. You can't tell me you haven't noticed how he looks at you. Or maybe it was him, leaning closer than usual, pouring my wine without asking. That almost imperceptible breath he caught every time I smiled. The warm atmosphere shifted when Lucian looked over my shoulder and frowned. Isn't that your brother? I turned in my chair and bit back a curse. It really was Ethan standing at the door. He was talking to the maître d' at the entrance, his hands waving animatedly like he was describing something. Is there any place we could go in this city without running into a member of your family? Lucian said. There was teasing in his tone, but I didn't even have it in me to laugh at the joke. Because he was right. Was there a tracking chip in my neck I didn't know about? Let's just turn around, I said, still glaring at Ethan. Maybe he won't see. Ethan looked up and stiffened, his eyes meeting mine. Lovely, I muttered, turning away. Ignore me, I prayed fervently. Scat. Ignore me like you've done in the last 10. Sarah? I exhaled sharply and looked up, not bothering to force a smile. Ethan. His eyes narrowed in suspicion. What are you doing here? I waved to Lucian, to our steak dinner. Performing open-heart surgery, obviously. He rolled his eyes. Very clever. I rolled mine too, pushing my seat back. I'm going to the bathroom. Hopefully, Ethan would miraculously vanish by the time I returned. As I walked past him, I said, feel free to make yourself scarce by the time I let out a surprised gasp as Ethan grabbed my arm with an urgency that shocked me. My eyes widened as he leaned in and sniffed my neck. What the hell? Where have you been? He asked sharply, his eyes snapping to mine. Who were you with? Excuse me. Lucian rose from his seat and his voice cut in, cool and calm. Ethan, let her go. But my brother's grip only tightened. There was something feral in his eyes. What scent on me was making him this way? Tell me, he ground out. Where she goes or who she spends her time with is none of your business, Lockwood, Lucian said, his voice firmer. Ethan's gaze snapped to him, and he growled, sounding more agitated than usual. It is when it involves my sister. The audacity stunned me, and I ripped my arm out of his grasp. You're unbelievable. You've ignored me for years, and all of a sudden, now you care? I care about who's around you, he said, eyes flicking back to my neck. She must have hugged you for the scent to stick like that. Who were you with? What the fuck? The only person who had hugged me today was Maya, and what the hell did that have to do with Ethan? He leaned forward again as if to grab me, but before he could touch me, I shoved him back with all the strength I could muster. His eyes flared as he stumbled backward, feet lifting off the ground for a heartbeat before he crashed into the empty table behind him. My eyes widened, too, at the fact that I'd just sent a full-grown alpha flying when opening a jar of pickles was my Achilles heel. Ethan stared at me with shock, and I looked down at my hands in equal measure. My pulse thrummed, my breath caught. I was buzzing. What the fuck, Sarah? He snapped, straightening. The entire restaurant was watching us, intrigued by the spectacle we were making. You are one of 4 people who have absolutely no right to pry into my life. You're not my brother, and nothing, abso-fucking-lutely nothing, I do concerns you. Next time you see me in public, I'd thank you kindly to mind your fucking business. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. He inhaled sharply, and I saw his wolf flare in his eyes. His jaw clenched, his eyes darkened, and he turned on his heel and left. I stood there long after Ethan disappeared through the doors, long after our spectators returned to their meals. Lucian didn't speak for a long beat. He simply placed a hand gently on my arm. I'm fine, I whispered, but I was shaking, this time from something else. I felt her, I said, turning to him. My wolf, it was faint, but she stirred when I pushed him. I looked down at my hands in awe. That was strength. Lucian beamed, proud. Now that is worth celebrating. We left the restaurant and went to a bar about 10 minutes away from what Lucian pointed out was Maya's apartment building. Alcohol flowed freely, with Lucian calling toast after toast. My cheeks flushed warm, and the adrenaline had softened into something almost giddy. I hadn't drunk like this in a long time, and I felt deliriously happy. Okay, Lucian chuckled, taking my glass from my hand. I think it's time we cut you off. No, I whined, holding my head up with my hands. It felt too heavy to hold on my own. We're celebrating. Let's not overdo it, yeah? He said, brushing hair away from my cheek. I have a feeling that when it comes to you, we'll have more reasons to celebrate. I don't get it, I mumbled, my words slurring. Why do you treat me so well? What do you get out of this? Lucian didn't answer right away. He leaned back, studying me with a look that made my stomach flutter. Or maybe that was the alcohol. I blinked once, twice, but the edges of the world had started to blur. The background of the bar melted into something syrupy and drowsy. My head dropped to the side, and the last thing I felt was Lucian's hand, steady, careful, catching my head before the darkness swept me into sleep. And through the haze, I heard the words but barely comprehended them. I want you as my Luna. Seraphina's Pav. I woke with my mouth dry and my limbs heavy, like I'd been asleep for 1,000 years and barely managed to claw my way back into the world. The faint scent of saffron and eucalyptus filled the air, soothing, grounding. Not my apartment. I blinked against the soft morning light streaming in through parted drapes and slowly sat up, clutching the edge of the couch. I recognized that scent, associated with my new friend and formidable trainer. I was on Maya's couch. Relief hit first. No unfamiliar sheets, no morning after regrets. I was fully clothed, my shoes were neatly placed by the door, and a blanket had been tucked over me. No smeared lipstick, no taste of another's mouth on mine, nothing to indicate I'd done anything reckless. Oh, thank fuck, I whispered. I rarely let myself indulge in alcohol as much as I did last night. After what happened with Kieran 10 years ago, I rarely let myself get inebriated, wary of making yet another devastating mistake. But then, inexplicably, underneath the relief was disappointment? I couldn't understand the feeling. I guess with everything that had passed between Lucian and me, a part of me had wanted something to happen. Lucian had looked at me last night like he saw me, really saw me. Not as Kieran's ex, not as the tragic, estranged daughter of the Lockwood family, but as a woman, one who was changing, growing, becoming. And I liked it. I fucking loved it. I leaned back against the couch cushions and exhaled. Maybe I'd let Maya get too into my head and imagined the whole thing. Maybe the warmth in Lucien's gaze was just his kindness, his steady loyalty. Maybe I was projecting hopes onto the only man in my life who hadn't treated me like an afterthought. I mean, how desperate did I have to be that I was wishing I had a drunken one-night stand with him? The front door creaked open before I could spiral too far. Maya stepped in, balancing 2 cups of coffee in a paper bag. The bag carried the same logo as the restaurant we were at last night. I guess she really was a regular there. "She lives," she teased, setting the bag on the coffee table and offering me a cup. I accepted it with grateful hands. "What time is it?" "Late," she answered, plopping down beside me. "But I'll say you've earned the indulgence." I raised a brow. "Really?" She smirked, shrugging. "Enjoy it while it lasts. Suicide drills first thing tomorrow morning." I groaned, leaning back into the chair. "I hate you." She blew me a kiss. I took a sip of the coffee, letting the warmth and caffeine flood my sluggish system. "How did I get here?" I asked softly. "Lucien brought you," she answered. "Carried you in himself like a goddamn knight in pressed slacks, laid you down, made sure you were comfortable, flat, wouldn't leave until I promised to call if you threw up or so much as breathed wrong." My heart thudded. She raised a brow, those sharp eyes of hers seeing too much. What's with the long face? I shook my head and instantly regretted it when it throbbed. "Ah, I see," Maya mused, smirking. "You hope to wake up in a different place." She winked. "Say maybe, Lucien Reed's bed?" My cheeks instantly flamed. "No, Maya, geez," she snorted. "Yeah, okay, I'm convinced." I sighed. You said a bunch of things and I thought maybe." I stared down at my coffee. "Did I misread it?" Maya tilted her head, scrutinizing me like she could see right through to the truth lodged in my chest. "No, babe, you didn't, but I'm guessing you're wondering why he didn't do more." I nodded. "Because you were drunk," she said simply. "And Lucien is a lot of things, strategist, visionary, charming devil, but he's not the kind of man who'd take advantage of someone not fully in control of their choices." That made sense, and it made me feel something else entirely. It quadrupled the respect I had for Lucien. Maya leaned in. "What happened to we're just friends? Do you want something more, Sarah?" I chewed my bottom lip, at a loss for an answer. "I don't know. What if I do want to pursue something with him? What if I regret not saying something last night?" Maya leaned back and grinned, looking particularly proud of herself. "Then say something today, tomorrow, whenever. Just don't let it fester." I let out a breathy laugh. "You make it sound easy." "Because it is. You don't need to make it harder than it really is." "In case you haven't noticed, I'm not exactly dripping in feminine allure," I said. "He's an alpha, polished and powerful. I shrugged, familiar self-deprecation settling over me. Maya frowned. "Okay, first of all, you. Don't ever talk about yourself like that again. Second, Lucien isn't some shallow prick looking for arm candy. If he wanted pretty and empty, he could find it tenfold. But he's stuck to you like gum on a shoe, even though, no offense, babe, you've hardly been receptive." That made me laugh, and she nudged me with her elbow. "Listen," she said more gently, "you're allowed to want things. You're allowed to feel desired. And trust me, Sarah, you are desirable. You have nothing to prove, not to the right man." I stared at her in awe, unable to believe that there was someone on this earth who saw me this way. "You're pretty fucking amazing, you know that?" I whispered. Maya leaned in and kissed my forehead. "I know." I craned neck to look up at her as she stood. "Going somewhere?" She winked. "I need to not be here for a while." I frowned. "Here? Like you're home? Because of me?" She shook her head. "Oh no, babe, it just turns out I've made too good an impression on my surroundings and I've become more visible than I'd like." My frown deepened. "Huh?" She laughed, stroking my hair affectionately. She pushed the paper bag to me. "Breakfast burrito and cinnamon roll," she announced. "Help yourself to anything in the fridge. Stay as long as you need to." I blinked at her as she moved through the room. She grabbed her keys from the counter and slung a canvas tote over her shoulder. She was acting so odd, but I didn't want to push. "You'll tell me what this is eventually, right?" Her smile was soft, affectionate. Definitely, I promise. Then she moved towards me again and leaned down to hug me, long and warm and anchoring. Don't run from good things just because you're afraid, she whispered against my hair. You've lost enough. When the door closed behind her, I was left in the quiet of her apartment, cradling coffee between my palms and wondering what the hell was going on. Ethan's POV. 23 hours. That's how long I had left to find her, the intoxicating woman with wildfire eyes and a challenge on her lips. My mate, Maya. Discovering her name was the easy part. Actually finding her was proving impossible, and now I was stuck prowling the streets around her favorite restaurant like a creep. Logan was in a constant state of agitation, prowling just beneath the surface, restless. She was out there, close maybe, but just out of reach. And the bond didn't help. I'd honored her rules. No sniffing, no shortcuts, and still, nothing. I was losing my mind, and my pride. Fast. So when my phone buzzed, and my mother's name lit the screen, I was already frayed at the edges. Ethan, she greeted, her voice soft. My chest ached slightly. Ever since my father died, she hadn't fully regained her luster, and I had no idea how to give her the comfort she needed. Hi, Mom. I wanted to ask. She hesitated. How is your sister? I winced at the memory of last night at the restaurant, the one I found out that Maya frequented often. I should have acted better, but Maya's scent I'd smelled on Sarah made me lose half of my mind, and nothing else mattered but finding out where it had come from. Sarah's words had cut deeper than I let on, and since Kieran's beta so eloquently explained the dynamics of our rocky relationship, I couldn't deny that I'd deserved them. She's fine, I said instinctively. She exhaled. So you've seen her? Things are better between you two? My mother was too fragile to handle the brutal truth, which was that Sarah loathed me. And I wasn't going to admit that someone half my weight threw me across the room like a rag doll. Whoever was training her at OTS must be a fucking legend. There, I paused, searching for the right lie. Better. Her relief was palpable. Good. That's good. A pause. Then, gentler. I baked her those cinnamon raspberry scones she used to like. Will you come pick them up and take them to her? I almost said no, but the hope in her voice stalled me. I knew she was trying to mend the rift between her and Sarah, the only way she knew how. Her pride held her back from facing her daughter, and my sister's new antagonism wasn't making things easier. I sighed. Yeah, I can do that. Thank you, darling. I hung up and dropped my phone in the console. I looked up and saw her. A flash of dark hair, honey-toned skin, long legs in combat boots. She was walking down the sidewalk, swinging a tote bag like she didn't owe the world a damn thing. Maya. Her presence hit me like a freight train. Logan surged, alert, feral, wound up. My chest ached with need. She was here. I'd found her again. Finally. Ethan's POV. Nothing else mattered. Not the way I haphazardly parked my car and stumbled out of it like a drunkard, or the fact that I dived into oncoming traffic and narrowly missed becoming roadkill. All that mattered was her, right across the road within reach, my fucking mate. Startled, she took an instinctive step back as I stepped directly into her path, panting like I'd run a marathon, not 20 feet. Her eyes widened, but the surprise was brief, quickly dissolving into a look of amusement and mild intrigue. She crossed her arms. Well, she said, cocking her head, someone's an overachiever. She just sent me on a wild goose chase, had me running around town trying to uncover a name and a damn address. Yet, despite myself, I smiled. Do I get bonus points for turning in my homework early, Maya Cartridge? Her lips twitched. We'll see. I took a step closer to her, my eyes zeroing in on the pulse beating wildly in her neck. She could feign nonchalance and indifference all she wanted, but I knew she felt the pull between us. It thrummed between us like a live wire, dangerous, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Congratulations, she said, her voice like velvet caressing my skin. You passed the first challenge with flying colors. I blinked. First? Her smile was slow, scheming. Dangerous. Next, beat me in combat. I raised a brow. Is there a final level where I have to fight a dragon and retrieve a magical stone, too? Oh, honey. She reached a hand out, and my breath hitched when she ran a finger down my torso and smirked. I am the dragon. My eyebrows arched. She had to be the craziest fucking woman I'd ever met, and God's help me, I was head over heels already. I'll fight you, I said, stepping into her space. Not touching, but close enough that the energy between us crackled, undeniable. And I'll win. She looked up at me through her lashes, that familiar challenge flashing in her eyes. Looks like your ego is as big as you are handsome. It'll be a shame if you're all talk, though. Trust me, I'm not, she shrugged. I guess we'll see. She started to walk away, but I caught her wrist and pulled her flush against me. Her breath hitched, and Logan surged beneath my skin, restless, growling. Her scent was a heady combination that momentarily scrambled my thoughts. You know, I murmured, leaning in slightly. Our lips were so close I could kiss her. Fuck, I wanted to kiss her so badly. I'm an alpha. We don't like being led in circles. She cocked her head. Then you're welcome to bow out. I gritted my teeth. I'm trying to respect your terms, Maya Cartridge. I hooked her chin with my finger and thumb, tilting her face up. But if you keep testing my patience, I'll simply take you to bed and mark you. Logan yipped even as my heart raced at the image of Maya naked in my bed, writhing under me, our bodies slick with sweat. Heat surged underneath my skin. Her eyes darkened, lust simmering underneath the challenge. But she stubbornly held on to her composure, and her smirk deepened. You want to take me to bed, Alpha? She leaned in close enough that I could feel her breath against my lips. She was testing every restraint I had, and she fucking knew it. Then beat me first, if you can. When? My voice was rough, my throat dry. Your choice. I'm always ready. Now, Logan roared. Right fucking now. But before I could answer, a memory surged. My mother's voice, hopeful, fragile. Will you come pick them up and take them to her? Stupid fucking pastries. I have somewhere to be first, I said tightly. An errand to run. Cute, Maya replied. I didn't know alphas ran errands. This one does, for family. I paused. After that, I'll be ready. I reached around her, unable to hide my smirk as she stiffened when my hand slipped into her back pocket and pulled out her phone. I held it up to her face and unlocked it with Face ID. I typed my number into her phone and held it out to her without saving it. She hadn't asked for my name, and I'd be damned if I volunteered it when she'd made hers so difficult to uncover. Text me the venue and I'll be there as soon as I'm done. She took the device from me, eyes gleaming. Can't wait. Fuck, neither could I. Sarah opened the door with a face like stone. I brought pastries, I said, holding up the bag like the peace offering it was. She didn't move. What the hell for? They're from Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice level. She asked me to bring them. She folded her arms. Again, what the hell for? I blinked. She's your mother, and she baked you pastries. Isn't that reason enough? They're your favorite too, cinnamon raspberry, right? She stared at me for one long second before she laughed, dry and sharp. Cinnamon raspberry is Celeste's favorite, Ethan. I blinked. No, that can't be right. That the only person whose tastes mattered to Mom was Celeste? She shrugged. Sounds about right to me. She scoffed. I can't fucking believe her. I exhaled. It was an honest mistake. There's no need to be so hostile. We're family. Her eyes narrowed, and I immediately regretted my words. I fought the urge to take a step back, remembering how she'd shoved me almost halfway across the room. Family. She repeated the word as if it were a foreign language. Do you even know the meaning of that word, Ethan? Because last I checked, family doesn't push you away for one mistake. Family doesn't scoff at you and hide you away and write you off because of a defect. And family knows what fucking dessert you like. Oh, come on, I sighed in exasperation. Like you know mundane facts like that about... Your favorite pastry is lemon squares. Specifically the ones at that little bakery opposite the pack house. Your favorite color is gray. You hate classical music because you think melody without lyrics is a ridiculous phenomenon, and you'll die before you put pineapple on pizza. I blinked at her, stunned. She crossed her arms. What about me, big brother? She sneered. What's my favorite color? Favorite food? Pet peeve? What music do I like or dislike? I opened my mouth, closed it. Nothing. That silence was a goddamn scream. Her face crumpled for a heartbeat before it hardened again. That's what I thought. Sarah, I had no words. Call it the law of elasticity. Call it self-preservation. Gavin's words were deafening in my head. Sarah reached her limit and snapped. Best get those to Celeste before they get cold, she said, nodding to the pastry bag in my hand. She stepped back into her house. I've done just fine without you all for the last 10 years, and I don't need olive branches or attempts to rebuild decimated bridges. Her voice broke a little, but she pushed on. If you care about me like you so adamantly claim, leave me the fuck alone. The door slammed in my face. I stared at it, a hollowness spreading in my chest, quickly filling up with guilt and frustration. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, but I instantly knew who it was. Venue secured. You ready, Alpha? I stared at the text, the ache in my chest shifting into something sharper. Something hungry. Oh, I was ready. I needed an outlet for the torrent of emotion swirling within me. And if the avenue for that happened to be the woman driving me to the edge of madness, all the better. Maya's povey. Fuck, he was hot. I couldn't help thinking that perhaps sparring wasn't the physical activity I should be engaged in with my mate. Surely those toned arms would be better served holding me up against a wall rather than throwing punches. I didn't realize when you said combat, you meant a staring competition, Ethan said, an eyebrow raised as he eyed me from the edge of the ring. I'd been wary of bringing him to OTS yet, so I'd chosen an MMA gym near my apartment. The smell of sweat and talcum powder filled the air, yet his scent still managed to evade my senses, setting Naira on edge. I let out an amused huff, turning my head away so he couldn't see the heat crawling up my neck. Oh, don't worry, I said, gripping the edge of my t-shirt and pulling it over my head. You want a fight? You'll get one. I smirked when his eyes darkened at the sight of my toned torso in nothing but a black sports bra. Let's get it over with, he said, his voice hoarse. The sooner I pin you on the mat, he smirked, the sooner I can pin you in my bed. A thrill ran through me. I dated around a bit, but none of them had given me even a quarter of the excitement I got just by standing in the same room as him. Despite his snarky comment, I let my eyes run down his body one last time. He was stripped down to a black t-shirt that hugged his muscles deliciously and training pants, eyes burning with a singular focus that made my pulse skip. Alpha. Dominant. Controlled. The idea of snapping that control sent another thrill down my spine. I didn't wait for a countdown. I launched at him fast. No warning, no warm-up. His eyes flared for a nanosecond before he caught the fist I threw at his face. Stepping to the side, he swung his arm around me, trapping me against his body. That's quite the punch you have there, he murmured into my ear. His heat radiated around me, his grip tight around my body, unyielding, deliberate. My first instinct was to sink into his embrace. My second was to fucking move. Dropping my weight, I hooked my foot behind his heel and twisted sharply, using his momentum against him. He stumbled just enough for me to slip out, twisting in his hold like water through fingers. My elbow jabbed into his ribs as I spun, and I ducked low, sliding behind him before he could recover. You always that handsy on a first date? I said, breathless but smug. He turned to face me, grinning like I'd just given him a gift. You call this a date? I'm having fun, I smirked, cocking my head. Aren't you? He chuckled, low and slightly feral. I'm about to. Then he charged. He was good, I'll give him that. His instincts were honed, his blocks solid, but mine were sharper, cleaner. I moved like smoke, struck like a blade, and for the first few minutes it was beautifully even. We circled each other, heat rising off our bodies in waves. I swept my foot toward his knee, but he caught my arm mid-move and twisted, redirecting my momentum. I spun with it, rolled through the motion, caught myself on my hands, and kicked back up to my feet. Sweat prickled at the base of my neck. You're holding back, I said, breathless but goading. And you're taunting me, he said, voice low and dark. I shrugged. Fair's fair. Then he stopped holding back. His hits came faster. His control slipped, not out of recklessness, but because his wolf was riled, challenged, drawn. And mine? Naira practically purred, loving the pressure, the proximity, the friction. It was a high unlike anything I'd ever felt before. He tackled me mid-lunge, and we crashed into the padded floor. I twisted us before we landed, straddling him as we hit the ground. My thighs caged him in, and he grabbed my wrist to flip us, but I shoved back. We froze there. Me on top, sweat slicked and panting, then bodies pressed together with nowhere to go but closer. I could feel every inch of him against me, hard and hot and high-strung. His gaze dropped to my lips. Screw it. I surged forward and kissed him. It was hard and hungry, teeth and tongue clashing in fiery desperation and snapping restraint. His hands left my wrists and found my waist, fingers digging in like he feared I was a flight risk. Hands free, my fingers tangled in his hair, tugging, and he growled into my mouth. He rolled us so he was now on top, pressing me into the ground, never breaking the kiss. I let him, just this once, just to see how it felt to surrender, to let someone else take the control I so rarely relinquished. Somehow, inexplicably, it felt even more empowering. When he finally pulled back, we were both gasping. His lips were shiny with my lip gloss, his eyes dark with a hunger I knew was mirrored in mine. My pulse was a drumbeat beneath my skin. I won. He smirked. I scoffed. I pinned you. He arched a brow. Really? 'Cause from where I'm standing, I'm the one on top. I threw my head back, a breathy laugh escaping me. I shifted my knee. If you're suspected of cheating, you won't pass this trial. He leaned in, his breath hot against my ear, and all I wanted to do was kiss him all over again. If it ends like this, I wouldn't mind a retrial. I pushed against his chest, letting my hands linger against the expanse of muscle covering his torso. His eyes flickered to something by my hip, and his hand reached out. I raised a brow as he held up what must have slipped out of my pocket. It was my OTS business card. He sat up, still straddling me, like he had no intention of moving anytime soon. His brows furrowed. OTS? I pushed myself up on my elbows. Look at you, discovering more tidbits about me. Elite trainer? His eyes widened. You've been so close all this time? I cocked my head. How so? My sister trains at OTS, he said. Well, sisters, I guess. His voice dropped a fraction, and I wondered what the story was there. Do I know her? He shrugged. If you're an elite trainer, probably not. She's struggling. Then his eyes snapped to me, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Would you train her? He asked out of the blue. Isn't it too early to be copping favors? He smirked. I'll take it as my prize for besting you in combat. I laughed. Cheater. Come on, he pressed, leaning forward. I fell flat on my back again, and his hands caged me on both sides. She needs help, and I think you could push her in ways no one else has. I bit my lip, staring into the dark expanse of his gorgeous eyes. I'm booked, I said simply. I have a student already. She's my #1 priority. Sarah had lived most of her life as an afterthought. I wouldn't do that to my new friend. He nodded, shoulders stiffening as if preparing for rejection. But I wasn't done. However, I said, gripping his shirt, pulling him closer, I was promised another pinning. I bit my lower lip. In your bed. Impress me and maybe I'll think about it. He chuckled and the sound curled in the space between us, warm and intimate. That's your criteria? My schedule's sacred. You want a miracle, pay the toll, I grinned. So what do you say, Alpha? Up for the real challenge? He grinned, feral and hungry. You're on. Seraphina's povee. Well, you look like the cat that got all the cream and had some tuna as dessert, I noted the next day when Maya floated into the training room, a very obvious spring in her step. She laughed as she dropped onto the mat next to me where I was doing my stretches. She was glowing, like her aura had been dipped in sunshine. I wanted to pry further, but our friendship was so new that I didn't know what lines there were, and I didn't want to cross any. I needn't have bothered, because the next thing she said had me almost pulling a hamstring. That's probably 'cause I got laid several times last night. Frankly, it's a miracle I can walk. I blinked wide eyes at her. I guess there were no lines after all. She laughed at my shell-shocked look. Fuck, I've wanted to tell you this since the moment it happened. I found my mate. I gasped in surprise. Maya! I leaned forward and threw my arms around her. That's fucking amazing. She hugged me back, laughing. You have no idea. I pulled back. I'm guessing it's going well, seeing as you had 4 orgasms last night and 2 again this morning? She grinned. I laughed. TMI. She fell back against the mat, giggling. I've got to hand it to the moon goddess. She picked a good one. Didn't know she could be so kind. My chest tightened, then softened. I was happy for her. I really was. Maya was amazing and deserved joy, someone who matched her power and fire. And yet, underneath the joy was a little pinch of something else. Something wistful. Without a wolf, the chances of finding my mate were practically nil, and my track record with love wasn't exactly stellar. Still, I managed a genuine smile. I'm so happy for you, Maya, I said. And I meant it. She sat up then, and her face fell ever so slightly, as if she was weighing something. He's asked if I'd consider training his sister. She needs help, and he trusts me to give it. But I didn't want to make a decision without talking to you first. If sharing your instructor makes you uncomfortable, I'll stay completely focused on you. No compromises. My chest filled with warmth. She didn't owe me anything, and it touched me to know she considered me like that. I don't mind, I said, shaking my head. Truly, don't let me be the reason someone else doesn't get what they need. Maya smiled, and her arms wrapped around me in a fierce hug. You're one of a kind, she murmured, and once it's appropriate, my mate will treat you to a proper thank you meal. I can't wait to meet him. She beamed. I'm sure you two will hit it off. Seraphina's povey. With Maya blissfully preoccupied with dating, basking in her new mate glow, I found myself alone after training for the first time in a while. She'd practically purred her way through sparring today, leaving me stretched out and sore in the best way, but also empty. It was silly, maybe since we'd only just recently become friends, but I missed hanging out with her. She'd ended our session early, so instead of going home right away, I decided to do a little shopping. Without Daniel's ravenous appetite to feed, I hadn't needed to restock until now. When I was done at the farmer's market, I headed over to the mall. I missed my baby so much, and since I couldn't be with him physically, I wanted to do some shopping so I could send him gifts. As soon as I started picking things out, I couldn't stop. I bought books, puzzles, art supplies, clothes, and shoes. I pushed my overflowing cart, shaking my head as I left the mall. I rarely splurged on myself, but I would empty my bank account if it made Daniel happy. As I neared the sliding glass doors, the specialty gaming store caught my eye. I stopped, glanced at my overflowing cart, then back at the store, then headed in. I followed the familiar flicker of pixelated lights to the wall of limited releases. I heaved a sigh of relief when I saw it. Only one copy left. Dragonblight 3 Firestorm Quest. Daniel was obsessed with the game and had already played Dragonblight I and II so much that he had memorized every level and mastered every move. He'd been so excited for the challenge the new release would pose. My hand reached out at the exact moment another did. Fingers brushed mine, warm, calloused, painfully familiar. I froze. Kieran. He blinked at me, just as stunned, and for a moment neither of us moved like our hands tethered us in some invisible standoff. He cleared his throat first. Sarah. I didn't let myself flinch. Kieran. He looked down at the game between us and then back at me. Daniel's favorite. I know, I said evenly. I was getting it for him. So was I. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Let me take it, he said. I'll pay for it and have it sent in your name, I bristled. That's unnecessary. Sarah, I can afford to buy my son a game, I said, sharper than intended. I never needed your money before, and I sure as hell don't need it now. He exhaled. That's not what I meant. Whatever, I mumbled, grabbing the game. His jaw tensed. How do you plan to get it to him anyway? You can't exactly FedEx it out to the very confidential, very secure island. I stilled. I hadn't thought of that. I'd bought Daniel enough gifts to fill Santa's sack and hadn't even considered how I was going to get them to him. Kieran raised a brow, waiting, already looking smug. Beta Gavin, I said suddenly. I'm pretty sure he knows how to deliver packages to the very confidential, very secure island. With that, I turned on my heels and headed towards the self-checkout, reaching for my wallet. But I'd evidently rubbed Kieran the wrong way. He stepped up beside me as I scanned the barcode and said, voice tight, You've maybe said a total of 5 sentences to Gavin in the period we were married, and you'd trust him with that, but not me? I turned to face him fully. Why not? You know firsthand that he's professional, efficient. I put the game in a bag and shot Kieran a pointed look, and he's never spoken to me like I'm filth under his shoe. He flinched, like I'd punched him straight in the gut. Good. Sarah, he exhaled heavily. I didn't mean those things I said. I shrugged. Well then, all is forgiven. His eyes widened. Really? I scoffed, shooting him a dark look. Of course not. I shouldered past him, heading for the exit. Sarah, his fingers brushed my skin, but I moved out of the way before he could get a steady grip. You said what you said, Kieran, I hissed. Fucking own it. You don't get to backtrack now or attempt to erase it. His expression shifted, flickering between guilt and something harder. Sarah, You said I never mattered, I reminded him, my voice quiet but seething. Not when we were married, not when we lived together, not even when I swallowed. When we made Daniel. Regret rippled across his face like a crack in glass. He stepped forward, lowering his voice. I was angry. But you did mean it. You meant every word. I straightened. And now you're surprised that I won't lean on you for help? That I won't play happy co-parents like none of it ever happened? Sarah, I'm so. Kieran. Of fucking course. I should have known wherever Kieran was, she wouldn't be too far behind. Celeste. I turned just in time to see her sweeping toward us in a designer coat, her hair curled into perfect waves, holding a pair of shopping bags in one hand and her phone in the other. There you are, she said, breathless. You just walked out in the middle of my fitting. You know I need your opinions. She looked at me then, her smile curving into something razor-edged. Oh, hey, Sarah. Her voice was sugar-dipped in acid. I said nothing. Her gaze slid to the game in my hand. That's for Daniel, right? I flinched as she snatched the game case out of my hand, her sharp eyes skimming over the title. Oh, he told me how obsessed he is with this. He'd told her? Surely she was bluffing. I couldn't imagine that they'd gotten close enough for Daniel to share his hobbies with her. I've been watching walkthroughs so I can get good. Maybe we can co-play sometime. She grinned like she'd just discovered sunshine. He'd love that. I didn't realize how still I'd gone until Kieran stepped half in front of me, voice clipped. There's no remote co-play on that island, Celeste. It's a closed circuit for security. Celeste blinked, lips parting like she was surprised he'd correct her. But she recovered fast. Oh, right. Of course. She stepped closer to him, her voice syrupy. Anyway, about this weekend, my gala outfit isn't finalized. It's a huge deal. First public appearance as your official mate and all. I want to make sure I look stunning. I blinked, surprised at the way my chest tightened at her words. She wrapped her arms around his and leaned into him. You haven't told me what colors you're wearing. It's important we match to show the world how well we complement each other. Her words were a knife twisting slowly in my chest. But I was done hurting because of Kieran and Celeste. She didn't even flinch when I took the game out of her hands and turned to my cart without another word. As I stepped past Kieran, I didn't look back, but I felt his gaze on me, heavy and unrelenting. But I kept walking, further and further till Celeste's voice was an inaudible whine, till I could forget the whole interaction and finally breathe again. Seraphina's pav. When I got home, I dropped the shopping bags on the living room floor and sank into the couch, the ache in my muscles nothing compared to the dull throb in my chest. I stared blankly at the ceiling, still tasting the bitter aftertaste of the brief encounter. I inhaled deeply, then exhaled through my nose. I wasn't going to let Kieran and Celeste continue living rent-free in my head tonight, not when I had better things to occupy my mind. I grabbed the encrypted phone from my purse and tapped the screen. Daniel answered almost immediately, his bright face filling the display. Hi, Mom, he beamed, and just like that, the heaviness in my chest lifted. Hey, sweetheart, I said, sitting up straighter. How are you? Good, he chirped. Today, I stood on the surfboard for 1 whole minute, I smiled. Oh, I'm proud of you. Just promise to always be careful, okay? He nodded. I will. Hey, guess what? I asked, grinning. What? I grabbed the bag of the video game and lifted the case into view, as if it were a treasure. Ta-da! His eyes lit up. You got it. There was only a limited release. I nodded. Yep, I got the very last one. Daniel let out a whoop so loud I had to lower the volume. That's insane! You're the best, Mom! I preened. I could feel his joy rushing through me as if it were my own. I tilted the phone so he could see the other things I bought. I also got you a bunch of stuff I know you'll love. Thanks, Mom, he grinned. Did you go shopping again with your new friend? Not today, I said, turning the phone back to me. She's busy tonight. I leaned in and whispered as if we were sharing a fun secret. Dating. Daniel wrinkled his nose dramatically. Gross, but okay. I laughed. It won't be so gross when you're a little older and you start dating too. The thought of Daniel, all grown and independent, building a life outside of me, made my heart clench. He paused, and when he spoke again, his tone was careful, deliberate. Do you want a date too? The question came out of nowhere and caught me off guard. Daniel? It's okay if you do. he said quickly, looking suddenly older than his 9 years. I don't want you to be alone. I'm not alone, I have you. He rolled his eyes, but a soft smile played on his lips. You know what I mean, Mom. I want you to be happy, and if Dad can date. His face scrunched again. Her. Then you can date too. I was stunned, speechless for a few seconds. You really don't mind? I really thought having his 2 parents dating so soon after getting divorced would affect him. He shrugged, casual but serious. You deserve someone who makes you laugh and remembers your birthday and tells you you're beautiful all the time, even when you're wearing those weird face masks at night. I blinked. You remember those? Mom, you scared me half to death the first time. I snorted and wiped at my eyes. Daniel grinned. I just want you to be okay, especially when I'm not there. I couldn't speak for a long moment. My voice would have cracked. My son, the same one who used to cling to my side like a barnacle, was growing up into someone kind, thoughtful, and wise in ways that made my heart ache and swell all at once. I love you, baby, I whispered, pressing a kiss to the phone screen. Love you too, Mom. While I put the groceries away and made dinner, our conversation played in my mind. I had to admit, it was a little freeing to know I had Daniel's blessing should I ever decide to date anyone. And that train of thought inevitably led me to reminisce on my earlier conversation with Maya. I'm just saying, you and Lucian would make the most adorable couple. Maybe, just maybe. I had just finished clearing up after dinner when my phone buzzed. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the caller ID. Lucian. I hesitated for a heartbeat before answering. Hey, Lucian. Hey, Sarah. Do you have any plans for tonight? I swallowed, leaning against the sink. No. Why? I could practically hear the smile in his voice as he said, The moon's in full glow. I blinked, then glanced out the kitchen window. Silver light spilled across the deck. I was just going to go to bed early, I admitted. I didn't have a good relationship with the full moon. It was a monthly reminder of what I lacked. When I was young, I would curl into bed and stuff a pillow over my face, trying to muffle the sounds of my pack howling in the distance as they ran together. He hummed, Well, Ilsa recommends running under the full moon to help reconnect with your wolf. I raised a brow. She does? And I'm sure the presence of an alpha with you will help immensely, he added, quoting Ilsa. I laughed, a little breathless. Now, why would you want to shackle yourself to boring mortal flesh when you can unleash your wolf for the night and run with your pack? Nothing's boring with you, Sarah. The teasing lilt in his voice was gone, replaced by something that warmed me. You really want to? I asked. I can't think of anything I want to do more. The cool night air hit my lungs like a balm. The world was quiet, the forest whispering around us as Lucian and I jogged side by side under the glow of the full moon. I'd never run under the full moon before, and I didn't know if it was a result of my session with Ilsa, or if it was something I could have always felt if I'd run in the past, but I felt something stir. My connection to the moon goddess wasn't strong, but tonight it felt like she was taking note of me, acknowledging my existence. And Lucian was right. His presence was an immense help. I could almost imagine I was running with my pack. I could pretend like I hadn't been excluded from bonding activities like this my whole life. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel like an odd piece of a puzzle never made for me. I felt whole. After a while, we slowed, breath misting in the night. Lucian turned to me. You're glowing. I braced my hands on my knees. That, I panted slightly, is called sweat. He chuckled, the sound like a warm breeze in the quiet forest. I smiled, then straightened, looking up at the moon, letting it bathe my face in silver. I haven't felt this grounded in a long time, I murmured. Connected. I turned to Lucian. Thank you for this. He smiled. Anytime, and maybe, one day, we won't have to do this in boring human flesh. The thought of one day being able to run under the full moon in wolf form made my heart race. I wondered if my wolf could sense me now. Was she proud that I'd stepped out under the full moon? There's something else, he added after a beat of silence. You know the charity gala I'm hosting? The one where I'm supposed to give a speech as the trainee representative and that you spent a ridiculous amount of money to clothe me for? He chuckled. The very same. As the host, I'm supposed to open the first dance, he continued, with a partner. Would you do me the honor? My stomach flipped. The opening dance? I echoed. You want me to do that with you? He nodded. Lucian, I swallowed. Only mates do that. He shrugged. That may be tradition, but I don't particularly care for tradition. It doesn't matter. All the attendees would see us and they'd think we were. I hesitated. I don't know how to waltz. I'll lead, he said, smiling faintly. It's actually quite easy. I shook my head, unsure whether to laugh incredulously or panic. What if I step on your feet? Then I'll consider it penance for all I've put you through during training. You're the only one in the world I want to have that dance with, Sarah. I studied him. His expression was open, patient, not demanding, not entitled, just hopeful. My heart was doing a weird, fluttery thing in my chest, and I knew why. Lucian's question, the way he was looking at me, the way he always looked at me. At this point, I could no longer deny it. I liked Lucian a lot. The kind of a lot that made my stomach twist when he looked at me for too long or said my name like it was precious. Yet something held me back. Despite Daniel's blessing and Maya's encouragement and the affection that was so apparent in Lucian's eyes, I didn't feel ready. Not yet, at least. And I didn't want to ruin this easy, comfortable rhythm we had, the friendship I hadn't known I needed until he gave it to me. So I gave him a steady, neutral answer. I know how important this event is to OTS, I said, picking at invisible lint on my leggings. I'd be honored to help. Lucian smiled, his voice gentle. We don't have to label anything, Sarah. I just want to share the evening with you. We'll go slow, no pressure. Yeah, I exhaled, my nerves easing slightly. We can do that. No pressure.